My name is Joe Peroni, and this is the Rise Above Project. And today I want to talk about one of the most important decisions that you'll ever make, and that's in choosing the correct partner for you. Now, there's many criteria to look at when you're looking for a partner, but the one that I want to look at for today is you want to choose a partner that knows how to suffer well. What does that mean? What it means is that there's two different kinds of suffering in the world. We have legitimate suffering and illegitimate suffering. Let's talk about legitimate suffering. This is the type of suffering that arises from facing reality and difficult truths. When you're with a partner, these things are going to happen, and you want to have a partner that can handle this. So what is reality and difficult truths? There are many. Let's look over some. Aging, that's one. Death, there's going to be some deaths that are going to happen, whether it's to your animals or people in your family. There's going to be grieving, probably job loss along the way. You're going to have arguments. You're going to have times when you think that you're not going to make it. Do you want to have a partner that can't handle that? You probably don't. If there's a Republican president, then I'm pretty sure that there's going to be a recession, and you're going to have to deal with that. So you're going to have to deal with difficult economic times. Do you want a partner that can't handle that? Probably not. Also, legitimate suffering deals with people that are looking for purpose and meaning in their life, and they're looking for growth. So what does this mean? It means that legitimate suffering is things like working out, going to the gym, going to bed at a decent hour instead of staying up all night watching reruns of things that are ridiculous. It means learning something new. It doesn't always mean having to go to school, but it always means having your mind open to do new things. And these are difficult. It's difficult to do things where you're pushing your mind and your body. And it's also difficult to do things sometimes when you have to say no to things. Sometimes that might be really fun, but overall it's not going to be good for your lifestyle. Now, I'm not saying don't go out and have fun. I'm not saying that. But you do have to have a level of going the middle way here. Also, dealing with injuries, which is going to be a normal thing. Dealing with sickness. How do we deal with that? Do you make your problems worse, or are you able to handle it in stride? Also, when we're dealing with suffering, it could be a person who has a lot of ambition. And how would this lead to suffering? Because people who have ambition, a lot of ambition, are always struggling to do more and to do better. And this is not always under your control. What is under your control is working hard, but actually getting the job done is not always under your control. And so pushing for success all the time, it can lead to a degree of suffering, not only because you're trying real hard, but because you're not always going to succeed and you're not always going to win. Also, what is purposeful is learning how to deal with the consequences of a mistake. And again, this takes a degree of honor to be able to own up to your mistakes, and it's a difficult thing to do. Most people cannot look at their mistakes. They cannot look past their own ego. They cannot look at themselves in the mirror and say, how can I do this and make it better? So there is legitimate suffering in trying to be a better person. Now, Carl Jung said, neurosis is a substitute for legitimate suffering. And this is what happens with most people. And so this leads to illegitimate suffering, where you can make a bad situation worse, or you're suffering from a situation that could have been avoided, or you're suffering from a problem that you actually created yourself. Now, think about in terms of paying taxes. If you don't pay your taxes, okay, that could have been avoided. All you had to do was pay your taxes. Problems created by the self, this happens all the time with people, and bad things happen always to people. That's just a normal everyday occurrence of life. But how do you deal with it? Again, do you want to face reality and face the truth and actively do something to fix it? Or do you want to sit back and make the problem worse, which is illegitimate suffering? So illegitimate suffering is any action or inaction that doesn't address the main problem and actively makes it worse. So what am I looking at here? We're looking at alcohol addiction. We're looking at drug addiction. And this is an interesting one because I hear this a lot and it's really unfortunate. I'll hear somebody say, well, for a lot of years I was addicted to drugs or alcohol, something like that. And they'll say, well, I've been sober for 2 years. It's a monumental achievement for me. And it is for them. But it's kind of like looking at an arsonist, right? Like somebody goes and sets a fire, and then they call the fire department or whatever, and then they help put out the fire. And they're like, look what I did such a great job. Well, you're the one who caused the fire. So how much can we praise you for that? Like, probably not at all, right? And this is what happens with people that are in this cycle of alcohol and drug addiction. It's like their main achievement in life is not to continue to drink. But that's not really an achievement. That's going back to neutral because that's part of illegitimate suffering. If they would have faced the reality and the truth of their life instead of actively making it worse by doing drugs and alcohol, they wouldn't have added to their problems. So what other things are illegitimate suffering? We can look at self-loathing. As a therapist, I see this all the time. People just feel completely incompetent in their life, and so they don't try to do anything new. And of course, when that happens, more negative things happen to them. And they can't accept the love that's given to them or any good things that come their way. They keep pushing it away. They don't trust it. So in doing this, if there's a bad situation, obviously they're going to compound that bad situation. Overeating is another one. People get stressed, they feel bad, they want to self-soothe, so they overeat. Again, this is illegitimate suffering. How does that help you? You end up destroying your body, you make yourself unhealthy, you don't feel good, you don't look good in your clothes, and you think you look ugly, and it's not a good return on investment. Also, some people isolate themselves, right? They may have had a bad relationship, or there's some type of breakup, and all of a sudden they think, well, people are scary because they might hurt me. I don't want to break my heart again. And so they isolate themselves, and so they never give themselves a chance to be connected to another human being. Again, this is complete illegitimate suffering. This does not have to happen. What other things add to illegitimate suffering? Instead of taking it on yourself and trying to do the right things and assess what can be done to improve the situation, a lot of people act out, and they do this by being aggressive, malicious, vindictive. They act bitter in the world, hateful to other people. They show a lot of anger towards other people. They're emotionally dysregulated. So how is this going to help a situation? So no matter what has happened in their life, there is no way to move forward in a good, positive way if we're going to carry that attitude. So again, we want to have suffering that's legitimate, that we need to face the realities of life and try to do what we can to make it better. It brings up a question though, how can you fix an unfixable problem? Such as grieving from a death. Well, the answer is that you don't fix it. You deal with it with as much grace and strength as you can. But grieving the loss of somebody, I don't think the best way to handle that is to destroy yourself or destroy the other people that are around you. Completely disrespectful to the person that you lost. I don't understand how that's a thing and why people do that. As a matter of fact, I think you honor the people that we lose by being the best version of yourself to carry on. Also, this one might trigger a couple of people here, but what would also go under the heading of illegitimate suffering is anxiety and depression. Because, and not all the time, okay, but many times it is. Because when we're looking at depression, it means that somebody's very sad and they just don't feel like they are getting the excitement or fun out of things that they did before. And that happens. But how do you improve it? Well, you don't make it better by doing nothing. And you don't make it better by talking yourself into about how bad your life is. One of the things you can do is get up and do something about it. And I know a lot of people will say, well, if I'm depressed, part of it means that I can't do anything about it. And that's like a first world problem, because that's not true, right? Like, you'll never see a lion out on the Serengeti who had a bad day and said, you know, I'm really depressed right now. I'm starving to death. There's an antelope, but I'm going to let it walk by because I'm just not feeling good today. Like, I was checking out my mane and it's not as fluffy as usual, so it's just a bad hair day, so I just don't feel right. Or, yeah, there was something that was very mentally disturbing, but I'm going to sit here and starve to death because I feel bad. That doesn't happen. Like, that's a first world problem. So if you took a gun and aimed it at somebody and said, okay, they will get up and move. That's the thing. So yes, depression is not all the time, but many times it's illegitimate suffering. And what adds to that is the victim mentality, where somebody feels that they're the victim and they feel like they have no power in the world, which again leads to another type of illegitimate suffering. And this would be the external locus of control, meaning that you think you have no power over your own life. You have no internal locus of control. You don't think you can do anything to make your life better. Why should I try? I'm only going to lose. Why should I try to talk to a new friend because they're only going to reject me? Or even if they didn't reject me, at some point they're just going to abandon me because I'm so horrible. The world just hates me, and wherever I go, even if it's on a sunny day, this big dark cloud hovers over my head and just follows me. That's the way the world is. But that's not the way the world is. So having an external locus of control, thinking that you have no control over the world and the world only controls you and everything from the outside you just have to deal with and roll with because there's just nothing you can do. Like, you know, your job sucks, but you don't want to go to school, you don't want to get a certification, you know, to get better at something, or you don't want to just switch jobs. You know, you can't do that. You have to get locked into this job that you hate. That's not true. You don't like the way you look, but you don't want to join a gym, or you join a gym, but you never go because it's 5 minutes down the road and you don't want to drive there. You know, I deal with this a lot with people. You know, I'll say, listen, I'm not asking for a lot. I'll ask for one thing from you this week. I want you to initiate one positive action that's going to move you to point A to point B. And I'll say, well, did you go to the gym? No. Why? Did you have any time? Of course you had time. Of course it was only 10 minutes down the road, and even if it wasn't, who cares? If it mattered that much, you would do it. So what's the point of the show today? The point of the show today is that if you are an individual, it's okay to suffer. We're all going to suffer. We're human beings. But you want that suffering to be legitimate, coming from things of facing reality and facing difficult truths in the world, and be able to handle that the best way you can. Unfortunately, there's a lot of difficult truths in the world that we have to just deal with. We can't make it better. And in that sense, we just have to do the best we can with what we got, and we have to face it as strongly as we can. But this thing about people making their lives worse consistently, and then we have to worry about the vice that they're doing, and that is the thing that we need to overcome when that's actually not true. That should be taken out of the way, and then we should be trying to live a self-actualized life. But people get all of these other things so much in the way that they can never actually get to the part of actually living a good life. And so, you want to be a person that can handle legitimate suffering, or handle suffering in the strongest way possible. And in doing so, you probably don't want to be with a partner that can't handle the inevitable difficulties in life. Because going through life with a person who is emotionally dysregulated, becomes aggressive, malicious, they freak out over every problem, Every bad thing that happens in their life, they're going to carry it forward. They're not going to really think about it and be introspective. They're not going to put a positive meaning to it to grow from it. And that's part of the point, is that everything of suffering that you experience in this world should be taken, and you should put meaning behind it. And then there should be a level of human achievement behind it to make you a better person with more wisdom. If you're not with a person like that, you are going to suffer as well. Hopefully this has been beneficial to you. My name is Joseph Peroni, and this is the Rise Above Project. Please subscribe and tell a friend. Thank you.